Obligatory disclaimer for CYA purposes. Warning, the following video contains massive spoilers to the film The End of Oak Street. If you do not wish to be spoiled, bookmark this video, go see the movie in theaters, then come back to watch this video. You have been warned. Hello everyone, I hope you're all having a great day so far. My name is JurassicKM and welcome to today's video. So my family and I made the 3-hour round trip and went to see The End of Oak Street yesterday, and I've got some thoughts on this one. Since I opened with the obligatory spoiler warning, let's jump right into it. Because I didn't watch the trailers, I had no idea that this movie is set in 1982, and I certainly welcomed this revelation. It was nice to see a different time period as a starting point before going back to a much different time period, because I don't know about you, but I'm tired of life in the 2020s, and to see the animals' appearances depicted the way they are in this movie, it makes the part where Brian, the son, is looking through dinosaur books in his room and after seeing living, breathing ones outside, and it feels like he's thinking, oh wow, we were way off. As for the cast, I thought they were great. When Anne Hathaway and Ewan McGregor are on screen doing their things, I'm not sure if I've seen McGregor do an American accent before this movie. I didn't see any of the previous characters that they've played. I saw Denise and Greg Platt, and I think the drama that their family is going through before they come to face with prehistoric life is actually pretty interesting. The Platts aren't despicable people by any means, but obviously there is some trouble in Denise and Greg's marriage, and they do blow up about it later on after craps hit the fan. Denise is secretly writing a book about an unhappy housewife who leaves her family, allowing her to channel her true feelings and desires, while Greg is hiding the fact that he was laid off from his job and has taken up delivering pizzas for extra cash, which their son Brian knows about, but I don't remember if their daughter Audrey does. I'm not familiar with Maisie Stella and Christian Convery, respectively, so it was easy for me to see them as Audrey and Brian. Audrey's studying astronomy to go to Cornell University. Audrey is actually the one who poses the theory of space-time wormholes to explain how their neighborhood got sent back in time. And Brian is a typical teenage boy biking around with his buddies and hanging out with his dog Starbuck. And any time dedicated to them doesn't feel like the movie slows down or stops altogether to info dump or show a side plot that no one cares about. Okay, maybe there's one. There is a side plot where it's revealed that Brian accidentally broke a kid's arm through circumstances, and the kid's older brother is threatening to beat him up. But it's weird because of this particular plot point, it simultaneously gets resolved while also not going anywhere. With a runtime of 100 minutes, The End of Oak Street moves at a good pace with a natural flow. It doesn't rush into the prehistoric peril and throw dinosaurs at you every 2 minutes like it has to keep your attention, but it never feels like a slog either. Honestly, not once did I check the time to gauge how far we were into the show, which is more than I can say about other movies that I've seen in the theaters in the last couple of years. Now, for the prehistoric life, this one is kind of a mixed bag for me. Effects wise, I think they look good. Not once did I think to myself, oh, that looks fake, or oh, that's a bad effect shot. Design wise, I thought there wasn't enough color diversity amongst the larger feathered dinosaurs and pterosaurs. Okay, look, I know some of the shots make the feathers, pycnofibers, whatever look like outright hair, but for simplicity's sake, they're feathers. Go with it. The Allosaurus, Camarasaurus, and Pterosaur species feature mixes of browns, grays, and blues with maybe a couple of hints of yellow and gold. The Spinosaurus and Ankylosaurus, which aren't as feathered as the previous creatures, if at all, are only seen at night, so you don't really get a great idea of what they look like color-wise. I haven't found a definite bestiary for this film, so I can't say for sure what everything actually is, but Dinopedia has a tentative list of featured species. Apparently, these are supposed to be Coelophysis. These are some big Coelophysis then. There's also some kind of crocodilian creature, which apparently is a Gargania. I hope I'm saying that correctly, as it is a species I'm not familiar with, but is probably the most colorful creature in the entire film. Dinopedia has the prehistoric turtles listed as Megalocalyes, which again, I hope I'm saying it right because I'm not super familiar with them, but I think you only see them at night. And then there's a Titanoboa, which I think is the worst design in the whole movie. It just looks like a giant pink, purple, off white slug with a snake head. I was not a fan. Weirdly, I thought that the end of Oak Street would focus on having creatures from one location and time period, but as the previously mentioned roster indicates, that's not the case. I guess you could chalk up to the inclusion of animals from other times and places as more wormhole shenanigans, wormholes within wormholes, wormholeception, if you will. Behavior wise, I didn't really get the impression that the carnivorous species acted like animals. With this kind of space and time displacement, I figured all of the animals would have been more afraid and panicked than anything. But the herbivores seem to trudge along amongst the suburbia like it's any other part of their world, including a scene where a pair of mating Camarasaurus use a garage to hold themselves up while they get busy, providing some much needed levity without also being immature. And the carnivorous species act like ravenous killing machines. My youngest theorized that perhaps they were behaving that way out of panic, like maybe some sort of surplus killing deal. But to me, they just felt like movie monsters out to get people rather than natural animals. Admittedly, this does not surprise me as it does work for the story the movie wanted to tell, but I did just want to throw it out there. So, on that note, let's talk about the creature carnage. The end of Oak Street is rated PG-13, but this felt like a pretty hard PG-13. You hear lots of people screaming and dying in the background, giving that disturbing sense of unease and letting your mind fill in the blanks. There are lots of shots of people meeting their ends at the jaws of a prehistoric predator. Plenty of bodies and wrecked cars are on the street, and while none of them are super gory necessarily, they feel like there's more weight to them than the deaths we've seen in some of the Jurassic World movies. Oh, hey, look at that. I went almost 8 minutes before mentioning the Jurassic franchise. The comparisons are inevitable, but I'm happy it took this long. Go me. When I say wait, I mean you get the feeling that some of these characters, maybe all of these characters, will not make it out of the movie alive. I'll come back to this specifically later, as there's this sense of inevitable doom looming at all times, like what you feel in horror or thriller films. I'm not convinced this movie is outright horror, but I wouldn't be surprised if others do. As the characters are exploring the neighborhood trying to figure out a way out later on, they walk past dung piles that you can see shredded and partially digested bits of clothing sticking out of it. So, if dead meat does do a kill count of this movie, that count is going to be fairly high, but they might need to comb through the poop piles and compare the clothing remnants to the people seen throughout the film. If you are concerned about violence against pets, the end of Oak Street is surprisingly very tame in that regard. I looked this movie up on doesthedogdie.com because pet deaths in creature features and horror movies is a trope that I've never been a fan of, and I'm definitely bored with at this point. And before you bring up The Lost World Jurassic Park, I didn't like that part with the dog in 1997. I don't like it in 2026, and I will continue to not like it into 2027 for that movie's 30th anniversary and beyond. It's like seeing devoured or infected kids in zombie media. Yeah, I get that if this were to actually happen, that would be a very likely outcome, but that doesn't mean I have to like seeing it. So first off, Starbuck makes it through. He's absent throughout most of the movie. A lot of the neighborhood exploration stems from at least someone from the Platt family looking for Starbuck, and then shows up near the end to save Brian from a pterosaur and gets to safety with his family. Other than that, there is a cat that you see crossing the street as Audrey is sitting on the roof of the garage reading a book when things start getting crazy. But then you hear it yowling briefly before a crunching noise silences it. Nothing is actually shown on screen. Later on, you see a backyard in the now rather apocalyptic looking neighborhood with a sign that says, "We heart our cat." Only that cat is laying dead beneath the sign with three baby coelophysis picking away at it. However, it isn't in your face, and even from a distance, the cat looks about as realistic as the dead cat from Obsession did, which is to say, not very, if you haven't seen Obsession. Let's talk about the ending of the movie. So, after Greg smacks the Allosaurus in the face with a sledgehammer, it looks like it is either dead or knocked out. But then, as he's checking on Denise, it grabs him by his leg, thrashes him around a bit, and bites his leg off at the knee. The severed leg is probably the quote unquote worst CG effect in the whole movie. Then, the Allosaurus feasts upon him in front of his wife, kids, and surviving neighbor, Jeanette. This really drove home that weight I mentioned earlier. After some more close encounters, they eventually find a wormhole out of the prehistoric world, and it takes them back to the night that they were teleported away, about 20 minutes before the wormhole transports their neighborhood. Denise tells Audrey and Brian to wait with Starbuck before running to a payphone and making at least a phone call. With 2 minutes left to go, they are sitting in the phone booth, Denise refusing to tell the kids who she called before they see Greg's car with the delivery sign chained to the top pull up. It's a very heartwarming reunion, although Greg is obviously caught off guard and surprised by it. And then the 2 mile radius of neighborhood is replaced with prehistoric jungle. This scene also makes good use of the single F bomb allowed in a PG 13 movie, and in the closing scene, a news report reveals that 2 years have passed since the incident that night, and Denise was able to convince some of their neighbors to get out, all of whom we'd seen killed earlier, including their immediate neighbor who threatened to shoot Starbuck in the first act of the film, surprisingly. My wife theorizes that Denise called her pre wormhole self and got her to call the neighbors and warn them, which is entirely possible. If post wormhole Denise told pre wormhole Denise things that only she would know, maybe that would convince them enough to listen to her. Them coming back through the wormhole doesn't erase their previous versions from existence because it is revealed that there are two versions of Jeanette at the end of the movie. What happens to the pre wormhole plots still in the house? Do they end up surviving, knowing that they'll make it back? Did pre wormhole Denise tell them what to look for and what to do? I mean, they only had 20 minutes, and Denise even tells Audrey, we don't have time to warn everyone. Do the other pre-wormhole plots end up in the past, left to die with the rest of the neighborhood post-wormhole Denise couldn't warn, knowing that they will technically never see Greg again? Time travel elements in stories always make me ask questions like this, so personally, I would just recommend taking the Austin Powers approach and don't worry about that sort of thing and just enjoy yourself. And for the record, I did enjoy myself with the end of Oak Street. Ranking it among the other 2026 movies I've seen so far, at this very moment, I am putting it below Mortal Kombat 2, but above Obsession. This is, of course, subject to change upon repeat viewings, should they occur. Do I think it is the best dinosaur movie since the original Jurassic Park, as many claim, some even saying surpassing it? Well, as someone who doesn't have a raging hate reaction for the follow ups, as most of John and Jane Q public seems to, no. Do I think it is a needed movie in paleo media? Absolutely, because while I don't think the end of Oak Street leaves a door open for a sequel, it could open the door for other paleo media aimed at an older audience if it is successful. Now, granted, this is only the first weekend that this movie has been open, but right now the numbers don't look great. Maybe they'll change for the better. Maybe they won't. The box office has been wild this year, and I'm sure there's a number of factors contributing to Oak Street's performance. Spider Man doing better than just about anyone expected. The separate marketing team using generative AI for some of the promotional material. It's a movie with Anne Hathaway, Ewan McGregor, a dog, and dinosaurs by Industrial Light and Magic. Why use slop when you have those selling points already? A B cinema score, general life in 2026. I just find it frustrating because I think this movie deserves better than what the numbers are showing. How many films have made oodles of money despite being chewed up and ripped apart by critics and moviegoers alike? If this movie doesn't end up doing well, I don't want to hear anyone complaining about new Jurassic entries. Where's the other dinosaur movies? Why do they keep making Jurassic movies? Oh, the first one is the only good one. Because varying quality be damned, audiences actually show up for those. You want big budget dinosaur movies without that iconic T Rex skeleton branded on them? Show up for them. Because as pessimistic as it sounds, when money talks, movie studios listen. Speak with your wallet, not your words. And on that note, those are my thoughts on The End of Oak Street. If I can make it happen, I will see it again in theaters, as it is a good time at the cinema and it could use the support. Folks, if you've made it this far into the video, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch it. If you like what you see, be sure to give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell so that you don't miss any future uploads, share this video around, and leave a comment down below. And until next time, this is JurassicKM, signing off.